This morning, the Israeli military is reporting they hit 300 targets. As the Lebanese health ministry says, at least 50 people are dead and more than 300 injured in intense Israeli attacks on Lebanon. It's the culmination of another deadly weekend in the Middle East as Hezbollah and Israel launched hundreds of rockets across the border. Some of the sights and sounds from the region. Hezbollah leadership vowed revenge last week following explosive device attacks across the country. Joining us this morning from Doha on where this will go from here is Nader Hashemi. He's an associate professor of Middle East and Islamic politics at Georgetown University. Welcome to Your Morning.
Thanks for the invite.
We're learning this morning Israel sent out warnings for people to get out of harm's way as the IDF focuses on Hezbollah targets. But Lebanon is saying women, children, and medics are included in the victims that they've been reporting. This is reminiscent of the same kind of warnings that went out in the early weeks of the war in Gaza. What could be next in this back and forth between the Israeli military and Hezbollah?
Well, I think in the short term, more of the same, more Israeli strikes on various Lebanese targets, more Hezbollah rockets going on in the other direction toward Israel. And of course, the big danger here is as this continues, and it looks like it will continue for the foreseeable future, all you need is sort of one missile to go awry to hit a sensitive target, a civilian target, where you have large civilian casualties. And then we take a giant leap forward toward a broader regional war. And of course, all of this has to do with the horrific situation in Gaza, where there's immense human suffering. And that war has also been intensified. I mean, I'm reading the news today from Gaza, and there's been an upsurge in Israeli strikes on the civilian population, which has just added to the devastation that has been going on there for roughly the last year.
How is the situation affecting citizens on the ground in both countries?
Well, in the case of Lebanon, there's a lot of panic and sort of chaos. I'm reading today that many Lebanese, both in the southern part of the country, but also in the capital city, are getting these text messages and voice messages telling them to evacuate, including ministers in the Lebanese government and people living in different parts of Beirut that they thought were safe, where there are foreign embassies. So there's a lot of uncertainty and chaos. And of course, Lebanon is a deeply broken and fractured country economically, politically. I don't think it could stand or withstand, a broader war that would push the country over the brink. Israel is a much stronger country politically and militarily, and so in the northern part of Israel, roughly 60,000 people have been evacuated, but now they suffer the prospect of increased military fire coming from the Lebanese side of the border. And so there's the likelihood of increased casualties on that section as well. Mm-hmm. And so this is a very dangerous time. I've never been more worried about, the prospect of a broader regional war than I am at this moment.
What are you watching for so closely? What are the indicators to you that make you say that make you've never felt more concerned? What do you see that concerns you the most?
Well, 50 people were killed today in Lebanon as a result of Israeli airstrikes. Last week, as a result of the attacks using communication devices and the targeting of a senior Hezbollah leader in southern Beirut, roughly 80 people were killed, thousands were injured, many of them civilians. And so, we're talking about at least, maybe 150 people have been killed in Lebanon just over the last week, thousands injured. And so if this continues, it's going to eventually, drag in other players, possibly Iran, possibly the United States. And so it's a very dangerous sort of moment. There's some discussion that Israel wants to invade southern Lebanon to create a buffer zone. That will, I think, increase the political temperature. We have to watch and see whether that happens. So things are moving in a very dangerous direction. And I think much of this has to do with the, personal policies and politics of the Israeli prime minister, who sees an opportunity here where there's an American election, knowing that no American politician is going to criticize him in the lead up to an election. So he sees an opportunity to strengthen his own precarious situation domestically in Israel, but also I think more broadly, try and drag Iran into a war, which has been the longstanding objective of this Israeli prime minister.
I'm glad you brought up the U.S. Politics. So the Biden administration is also, we know, concerned about an all-out war between Hezbollah and Israel. And the UN Special Coordinator to Lebanon took to social media, had this to say: with the region on the brink of an imminent catastrophe, it cannot be overstated enough. There is no military solution that will make either side safer. Will these messages of caution have any impact on the actions of either military force?
They certainly won't affect the Israeli prime minister for the reasons that I just mentioned. I think he benefits by, flexing his muscle and showing that, he can hit Israel's enemies. Benjamin Netanyahu has a huge problem domestically because he was the prime minister when the October 7th attack happened. And so this is a way of, compensating for that huge failure. I think also Netanyahu, does not want to sort of sign a ceasefire deal in Gaza, which could stop this conflict both in Gaza and in Lebanon. And he doesn't want to do that because I think he very much does not want to give Joe Biden a victory. He prefers Donald Trump to come in power. And I think this is part of his calculation as well. But I think the United States really is largely, in my view, to blame for this escalation because they simply refuse to put any constraints or establish any red lines at Netanyahu. And he knows this. I mean, let's not forget at just a couple of months ago, at the end of July, Netanyahu came to Washington, D.C., and he received 61 standing ovations before a joint session of Congress. And as soon as he went back, he escalated, attacks in different Middle East countries and increased repression in Gaza.
And again, we've seen and heard these moves before coming from Israel, first both warnings, then creating sort of these safe zones, asking people to evacuate. This is not something that is unfamiliar in the last year or so. Professor Hashemi from Georgetown University, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.